Hey folks, this is Mr. MegaManFan, and I've got a little bit of a Steam Deck update for you today on Homebrew Review. As it turns out, running emulators on a Steam Deck is pretty dang easy, and all it took was buying a Bluetooth-enabled mouse, and once I had that and I was able to navigate more easily through the menus, this works in both the Steam game mode and the desktop mode, so you can use the mouse on either side. So if you prefer a mouse controller for certain games, Bob's your uncle, go ahead and do that. But what this really enabled me to do that I hadn't previously been able to do was click on what I wanted to click on and download what I wanted to download without having to try to do it with the touchpad controls or any combination of configuration layout using touchpads and buttons. I was able to just simply select RetroArch from Linux using a Google search, and once I did that, I was able to install it as an application in desktop mode. Now, what you're going to need to do once you download and install RetroArch in desktop mode is add your cores. They don't just come by default. That might be a legal reason or it might be a customization reason, but you need to go to the option that says download core, and it will have a core list for you of all the different cores you could want. For example, here's an Atari Jaguar 1, and the sharp sign tells you that it's installed. You've got tons of options here. Here's a ColecoVision 1. They don't take long to install, only a few seconds apiece. And you'll see a sharp next to any of them that I have downloaded and installed. Some are actually standalone games, like there was a Cave Story one, which isn't a core for anything other than the actual Cave Story game. So kind of interesting that there are standalone cores, but also there's DOSBox if you want to run MS-DOS games, DOS-based games, you can use that. Minimac, I will go ahead and grab that core as long as I'm here. Intellivision, take notes, Mr. Tallarico, because more people can play Intellivision on a Steam Deck than ever will be able to on your failed console. PC Engine emulators, DS emulators, 3DS emulators, Game Boy emulators, all kinds of Nintendo emulators, so on and so forth. You get the idea. There is a ton of different options available for Steam Deck using RetroArch. But what you want to know is, how well does it work, right? Well, let me show you. Let's start with Mega Man for NES. And there it is. You'll get some options at the beginning that'll say disconnected and reconnected, but you can kind of ignore those and just start playing the game. As you can see, it sounds right, it looks right, and best of all, the default Steam Deck controls, you can use the D-pad, and the buttons work the way they're supposed to without you having to do anything else. Now, for my own purposes, I did remap a couple of the buttons. Before, the A and B were over here, which makes sense because they're labeled A and B, but I found turning my hand that way was kind of uncomfortable, so I remapped them to X and A so that I can hold my thumb and shoot at the same time. As you can see, works pretty darn well. I will switch to a different game just to show you what's possible here. We'll close that one. We'll go back to RetroArch. History again. Let's do Sonic the Hedgehog. Now this one is by default scaled to the resolution of a pocket color, so it's a little small, but you can go into the options if you want to make it bigger. Click on more actions, click resize, and then you can drag it to any size you want. And again, by default, you're going to be able to use the buttons that you know. And of course, the Pocket Adventure, there's really only one button you need to know, jump, because Sonic is either running or jumping. And of course, you hold down and hit the jump button if you want him to get there. When he crouches down, there you go. Now you can see what I'm talking about. How he does his speed up. And I'm probably going to get clobbered by the monkey here because I'm not doing anything to get out of the way, but I just wanted you to see what was possible there. The only one that I'm not going to run is Alien Crush, because I've had videos before where I've showed Alien Crush and the copyright holders seem to know that music well and look for footage of it on YouTube and try to knock it out of the box anytime somebody uploads footage of Alien Crush. So it's not really worth those kind of headaches, but I can tell you from running Alien Crush that PC Engine games also work well on this. In fact, so far, I've only been doing TurboGrafx, Neo Geo Pocket Color, and Nintendo games, and they've all worked flawlessly, so I'm not sure there's anything that a Steam Deck can't handle from the early generations. Now, I imagine once I get past that up to like Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 and the like, maybe it'll start to bog down a little bit, but I also know from watching Linus Tech Tips that people have actually done modern day systems, although they blurred out the footage. But apparently if you get the right emulator and the right shaders and compilers, it can be done, and it's slow booting up the first time, but then after that it runs pretty well. Maybe not at a consistent 60 frames per second, but at a playable speed in most cases. Whereas with these older systems, I would say anything from before the year 2000, probably going to be just fine. Nintendo 64, I will have to do a separate video on, because N64 emulation has always been complicated and sometimes seems to need a custom build for each individual game. I've not had much luck with it trying it on Mac, but I'll do a separate video about N64 on Steam Deck later on. But I just wanted to say that, again, this is entirely doable if you have a Steam Deck, and all you really need is a mouse. I mean, if you're good at using the built-in controls, surf the web using the built-in controls, but for me, I honestly found it made much more sense to use a mouse to do this than to try to use the screen. That way I don't leave fingerprints on the screen, or use the touch pads, because it seems to jump around a lot if you're not really good with touch pads. This way I can just accurately click on what I want and type things into the search bar. Even if you have to use the Steam keyboard to do that, hold down the Steam button and hit X, and that brings up a Steam keyboard. But if you don't want to do it that way, any Bluetooth keyboard will sync up with the Steam Deck just like any Bluetooth mouse will. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Steam Deck emulation, which is surprisingly easy to do. Just Google search RetroArch for Linux. It will download and install the application directly to your Steam Deck and just start adding cores yourself, and you can do quite a lot.